New Marvel Snap patch means new Marvel Snap data mines, giving us our first early look at cards that'll likely be coming in the July season. If you're looking for my thoughts on cards coming in May or June, I've covered those on the channel in the past, and I'll link those previous videos in the description down below. Let's go ahead and dive right into our first look at the July stuff now. Data mine to be our season pass card in July, releasing on the 9th. We have Gwenpool, a 4/4 with the on reveal effect. Pick a random card in your hand 4 times. Give it +2 power each time. Essentially, this means that you're going to get 4 +2 bonuses to cards in your hand, with the ability to pick the same card multiple times, meaning if you have, say, 4 cards in hand, one of them could get +8, they could all get +2, 2 could get +4, a 6 and a 2, etc., with 8 bonus power in total being distributed. All in all, Gwenpool seems like a very reasonable Marvel Snap card in this iteration. If we operate under the assumption we're going to be able to play out all of the cards that her bonuses get applied to before the game ends, she's essentially providing 12 points worth of stats for just 4 energy, which is solidly above rate compared to other 4 energy statistics like Cull Obsidian or Crossbones. Gwenpool's bonuses also can be leveraged even further through some deck building choices. You have something like, say, Black Panther, who doubles his stats when he comes into play to double her bonuses up. You could also leverage something like, say, one of my favorite cards in Moon Girl to duplicate your cards that you've applied her bonuses to. I could see a world where you try and construct a deck where you get your hand down to just 1 or 2 cards on turn 4. You Gwenpool to pump them up. You Moon Girl on 5 and then get that bonus doubled, meaning Gwenpool could get north of 20 points of power for her 4 energy if you really build to maximize her effect. All in all, I think Gwenpool's kind of the perfect type of season pass card. She's inherently powerful at face value, letting her be straightforward to use for people that just want a straightforward numbers card, but she also comes with some interesting deck building requirements, letting you get even more out of her effect if you really try and work to make it happen. Our first Spotlight cash release in July, data mine to be dropping on the 9th when the season goes live, is Hydra Bob, a 2/5 with the effect after each turn, move to another location if you're losing here. At face value, I think it's pretty hard to say how Hydra Bob is going to play out in terms of power level without actually getting my hands on it inside of the game. It obviously fits the kind of template that we've seen a lot of other cards in Marvel Snap have, of being a 2/5 with a drawback. Cards like Silk or Lizard regularly see play as 2 energy cards, so I wouldn't be surprised if Hydra Bob joins the ranks of those with his drawback being different than what they offer. I think the one thing that jumps to mind reading this effect to me is that he will be a card that will be beneficial for helping you get priority early, because if you play him out, not only does he provide his stats, but should your opponent be able to overpower him early, he's going to jump off to a different location, making you more likely to win that one and less invested where your opponent has committed. This could make him beneficial in decks that are looking to play effects like Armor or Cosmo, since those cards really want you to have priority in the early turns of the game to get the most out of them. Past helping you hold priority early, Bob also obviously helps us achieve a further critical mass of cards that have low energy cost and 5 points of power, making Cerebro 5 more real with every passing month. Our next weekly card release, slated to drop on July 16th, is Ajax, a 4/4 with the ongoing effect gets +1 power for each card in play afflicted with negative power. At face value, I think Ajax has a ton of potential. There's 24 slots on the board in a given game of Marvel Snap, meaning in theory, you could afflict the 23 other cards in play aside from Ajax with minus power, letting him have 27 points as his theoretical ceiling. While obviously that's a bit of an extreme case in tandem with something like, say, Hazmat, who's often been a fan favorite that people try to work, I think Ajax could very regularly be punching up to double digits worth of power. The fact that Ajax is also ongoing as opposed to, say, an on reveal means that you have until the end of the game to make his effect happen. So you can set him up early on curve turn 4 and then drop your hazmat on the final turn of the game, letting him jump up after the fact, making it easier to dodge opposing tech cards like, say, Shang-Chi, and he's not susceptible to something like Shadow King since his effect is ongoing. It's also interesting to me that Ajax doesn't explicitly just care about your opponent's cards being afflicted, so while Hazmat is likely going to be his primary best enabler, it also means you could play something like Typhoid Mary to shrink the rest of your board to pump your Ajax up. This could even give way to something like, say, a Scar Ajax deck, since both Mary and Ajax can likely have 10 points of power when they're on the battlefield together. Our next card release, slated to drop on July 23rd, is Copycat, a 3/5 who says, when you draw this, steal the text of the bottom card of your opponent's deck. While how powerful Copycat is obviously going to have a good bit of variance depending on the matchup that you're playing into, one element that will be consistent that she provides is the information that you get when you see her copy a card. Marvel Snap decks are singleton and they're very rarely shuffled, meaning when you draw your Copycat, you get to gain the knowledge of a card in your opponent's deck that they are likely not going to have access to if you're playing a typical game. The question will be is this information plus a 3/5 body worth the slot inside of anything? She is a 3 energy card after all with an alright stat line, so Surfer could be a deck that's interested in having information and a potential high roll. You know, imagine you play Copycat against something like Living Tribunal and it grabs Iron Man. I think it's also a big deal that you get the information about what Copycat is doing before she comes into play. So even in the games where she's not worth putting on the actual field, she still provides knowledge for you to snap and retreat appropriately with. Our last card for the July season seems incredibly powerful as Data Mined, set to release on the 30th of the month. Cassandra Nova is a 3/1 with the on reveal of draining 1 power from each card in your opponent's deck. Drain is actually a new keyword, I believe, appearing for the first time on this card. I would assume that it means afflicting that penalty on the opponent's card that you're draining from, and then giving her a bonus equivalent to the amount of penalty that you're inflicting. That means Cassandra Nova is going to be more powerful the earlier she is played in the game. In a typical game of Marvel Snap, players have 6 cards remaining in their deck on turn 3, which means Cassandra Nova is not only going to reduce the power of every subsequent card your opponent draws, but she'll also be a 3/7 for herself. I also like that this card has some potential deck building synergies that you could leverage. This could be a new card perhaps to play alongside the Darkhawk package, since things like Korg, Widow, and Rockslide make the opponent's deck larger, giving Cassandra more cards to drain points away from. Thanos isn't the current metagame powerhouse that it once was anymore, but she's obviously a hate card for that. And Cassandra Nova here is notably releasing after Arishem, who's going to be doubling up the size of some people's Marvel Snap decks, who Cassandra would absolutely love to drain massive stats off of all of those. As templated, assuming that Drain really does give Cassandra a bonus while inflicting a penalty to each card that she's draining, I expect this card to be very playable generically and have reasonable deck building synergies to boot. As a final note in today's card review video, all of the cards that we covered here are early data mines, meaning that they are subject to change, and one card that has changed is going to be coming up sooner is that Sage, set to release on May 14th, is now data mined to be a starting 3/0, while still having that same on reveal +2 power for each different power among all other cards at her played location. I was pretty low on Sage when she was a 4/1 to start, but at 3 energy, she starts to look a good bit more appealing. Keep in mind that she is counting cards on both sides of a lane, meaning in theory, she could be getting up to 14 points worth of power if your opponent has 4 differently statted things and then you have 3 differently statted things that don't match any of your opponents. I think that ceiling outcome is pretty unlikely to happen, but I think there is a consistent reality where Sage is probably somewhere in the 6 to 10 range. Another thing that jumps to my mind whenever I see a 0 power card is obviously she could potentially be a powerful effect inside of Mr. Negative. She gets discounted by something like Ravona, and you could even play her with something like Bass to give her some base starting power before her on reveal effect pumps her up even more. As always, I'd love to know in the comments down below which of these upcoming cards you're most looking forward to. If I had to pick one out from the July season, I would say Cassandra Nova definitely has my eye. I'm a big fan of the Darkhawk package in general, and having an additional payoff that shrinks our opponent's cards when they're not getting disrupted sounds truly delightful. As always, if you enjoyed my breakdown today, I'd ask that you snap that like button to help it reach some more people, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of the excellent edited Marvel Snap content here at Hoaglandia Snap many days of the week.